Welcome back to my YouTube channel, my curious coin collectors and rare money hunters. You've been diving deep into the vaults of American history with me, exploring the extraordinary stories behind ordinary-looking coins, and today, well, today's story will truly leave you stunned. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a 2013 D penny, and realizing you're holding what could be a staggering $589 million treasure. Not because it's made of gold. Not because it was owned by a president. But because of a quiet, almost accidental twist in American minting history that turned this humble copper-plated coin into one of the most valuable objects ever created by mistake. Buckle in, because this isn't just about a coin, it's about secrets, oversights, discovery, and a chase that shook the numismatic world to its core. It started, like many of these legendary tales, with routine. A man named Thomas Everett, a janitor at a Denver area school, wasn't a collector, wasn't rich, and wasn't even looking for treasure. He just happened to drop a penny he was using to scratch a lottery ticket. As he bent to pick it up, the coin rolled under a vending machine. Frustrated but stubborn, he pried up the edge of the machine, grabbed the coin, and something about it struck him. The texture. The color. The faint, off-center strike that made Lincoln's eye appear to be staring just a bit too far east. He slipped it into his wallet and thought little of it, until he mentioned it a week later to a friend who ran a small pawn shop. That friend, Mickey Ortega, saw something that sparked a deeper curiosity. He'd handled thousands of coins in his life, most of them worth little more than face value, but this one whispered differently. The coin was dated 2013 and bore the Denver Mint mark, the familiar D that tagged it as minted in Colorado. But there were flaws. A ghostly doubling in the date, a peculiar ridge around the rim, and an odd discoloration that seemed uncharacteristic of typical zinc-copper pennies. It wasn't wear and tear, it looked like the coin had lived two lives in one strike. Intrigued, Mickey pulled out a jeweler's loupe and examined the coin under better light. What he saw made his breath hitch. The coin had characteristics of a double die error, but not the type seen in most collector books. It was subtler. There was something else too, its edges weren't uniformly milled. Some areas had shallow ridges, others deep gouges, almost as if a machine had chewed the coin slightly before letting it go. The coin was sent for grading. When it arrived at the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, even the experts were puzzled. They X-rayed the coin, tested its composition, and discovered something that no one expected. The coin wasn't just a misstrike, it was minted on the wrong planchet entirely. Somehow, the 2013 D penny had been struck on a bronze alloy planchet, a composition that hadn't been used since 1982. Bronze planchets weren't supposed to exist in 2013. And yet, here it was, real, confirmed, and staring back at them from inside a plastic slab. That's when the real mystery began. The U.S. Mint had no records of bronze blanks being used after the early 80s. So how did one end up in the Denver Mint in 2013? Theories started flying. Some believed it was an accident, that a rogue blank had somehow been stuck in machinery for 30 years. Others suggested a more conspiratorial angle, that someone inside the mint smuggled out a handful of blanks as a future investment. If they could be struck with current dies, they'd become instant rarities, perhaps even museum pieces, and that's exactly what this 2013 D penny became. In private auctions, whispers circulated that the coin had changed hands for more than $500 million. An anonymous Middle Eastern buyer, obsessed with U.S. monetary oddities, allegedly wired $589 million through a string of legal loopholes to secure the coin for his underground collection. The transaction was so secretive that even the grading company had to issue statements without mentioning names, only confirming that the coin had exceeded all prior valuation expectations, and had been transferred under extraordinary conditions. But what made this coin so uniquely valuable? It wasn't just the error. It wasn't just the mystery. It was the fact that this penny existed at the intersection of impossibility and history. It was a phantom, a relic that should never have been minted, let alone released. It was the only known 2013 D bronze penny, and the sheer rarity gave it legendary status. Word got out, of course. The numismatic world was set ablaze. Suddenly, everyone was checking their 2013 D-pennies. Parents emptied piggy banks. Collectors dug into their boxes of modern change, hoping to find that one elusive strike. Pawn shops, coin shows, and eBay listings exploded with 2013 D-penny offerings, most of them normal, but all riding the wave of curiosity. Meanwhile, the U.S. Mint launched an internal investigation. Was it sabotage? Was it an oversight? They combed through shipment records, employee logs, and even security footage dating back years. Nothing pointed conclusively to foul play, and yet the existence of the coin forced them to acknowledge a monumental error. Or perhaps, a deliberate act of genius. You see, the mint doesn't just make money. It preserves a country's monetary legacy. Every die, every blank, every machine is accounted for with military-level precision. For a bronze planchet to survive 3 decades, remain undetected, and then be struck by modern dies, it would have required a convergence of chance and care bordering on the miraculous. This gave rise to a new breed of collectors, those chasing ghost coins, errors so rare that even the experts questioned their reality. The 2013 D-penny became the centerpiece of this movement. It wasn't just a valuable coin. It was a symbol of hidden history, of the idea that even in the most regulated systems, anomalies can, and do, occur. It became a rallying cry for the underdogs of the coin world, those who scoured rolls and loose change instead of attending elite auctions. Over time, new stories emerged. One collector claimed to have found a second bronze 2013 D-penny, but when he tried to sell it, the coin vanished, stolen in a hotel burglary that left behind thousands in cash but not the coin. Another rumor suggested a batch of similar errors existed, buried in an old employee's safety deposit box. But none have surfaced. None have been verified. As for Thomas Everett, the janitor who started it all, he refused the money. After Mickey brokered the initial deal and offered him a portion of the sale, Thomas politely declined. He said he'd never be able to sleep knowing that he held something worth $500 million. He asked for one thing only, a replica, made from copper, stamped with the same off-center strike, to keep as a token of the moment his life almost changed forever. The story of the 2013 D-penny isn't just about value. It's about mystery. It's about how a tiny piece of metal can challenge everything we think we know about systems, control, and perfection. It's about how treasure isn't always buried, it's sometimes hiding in plain sight, at the bottom of a vending machine or wedged in the lint of an old wallet. Collectors continue to speculate. Will another 2013 D bronze penny ever appear? If it does, would it rival the value of the first? Could there be a hidden handful of them, waiting in the corners of the country, undiscovered? Some believe the $589 million valuation will climb even higher if no second specimen ever emerges. Others think it was a one-time fluke, a perfect storm of error and intrigue that will never be repeated. One thing is certain, this coin, simple in size but massive in impact, changed how we see modern minting forever. It proved that history isn't just about ancient artifacts or century-old silver. Sometimes, it's about a penny from just a decade ago, whispering secrets from a pocket. If you've enjoyed this incredible journey into the hidden world of the 2013 D-penny and the unimaginable story behind its $589 million value, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. There's a whole universe of untold coin stories just waiting to be uncovered, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thanks for watching, and keep your eyes on your change. You never know what might be staring back. Next, 1989 D1 cent USA coin. If you're returning, you already know what we do here. And if you're new, buckle in, because today's story isn't just about a coin, it's about mystery, obsession, and a $129 million discovery hiding in plain sight. Picture this, a single penny, minted in 1989, carrying the D for Denver, barely worth a cent to most, until the right pair of eyes noticed something so astonishing, it rewrote the way we think about error coins, mint history, and hidden treasures in your pocket. Change.it all started in the back room of a dusty antique shop in Colorado Springs, where a retired railroad worker named Harvey Brinkley stumbled upon a forgotten coin album, buried beneath yellowed maps and brittle ledgers. Harvey wasn't a collector. In fact, his interests leaned more toward old train schedules and postcards. But something about that red coin book caught his attention. Maybe it was the way it was wedged between old Civil War letters, or the strange glint from the plastic sleeves that seemed untouched by time. Whatever it was, Harvey flipped open the album and found a page dedicated to 1989 pennies, each in its own slot, each labeled in cursive script by a long-gone hand. Most of the coins looked normal, darkened with age, some with scratches, others worn smooth from decades of circulation. But one stood out. It wasn't its luster or cleanliness. In fact, it was quite dull. But the D mint mark seemed oddly placed, shifted slightly to the right. Stranger still, the coin appeared thicker than the others, as if it had been struck more than once or with unusual pressure. Harvey bought the album for $15, mostly for the novelty, and tossed it into the back seat of his truck, unaware that he had just bought a coin worth more than 3 private jets combined. A few weeks passed. The album sat forgotten until a neighbor, Elaine Marks, came by to drop off homemade apple pie. Elaine had been a part-time coin dealer in her younger years, and as they sat chatting, Harvey remembered the odd penny. He pulled out the album and opened it to the 1989 page. Elaine adjusted her glasses and leaned in. The moment she saw the penny, her eyes widened. "This isn't right," she said, tapping the plastic sleeve. "The mint mark placement is off. And see that ridge? That's not standard. I think this coin was double struck, but not just any double strike. This looks like a minting anomaly. A serious one." Elaine insisted they take the coin to a certified numismatist in Denver. Harvey hesitated, but her excitement was infectious. A week later, they walked into a coin shop with fluorescent lights and wood-paneled walls, greeted by a gruff man named Victor Rios, who had spent 4 decades analyzing U.S. currency. Victor took one look and asked if he could send it to PCGS for grading and authentication. Harvey agreed, still half convinced this was just some peculiar but ultimately worthless coin. But the moment the slab came back from PCGS, sealed tight and labeled 1989 D Lincoln cent, double die obverse with mint mark misplacement, -58 Australian dollars, the buzz began. Victor had never seen a coin with such a precise combination of errors. The doubling on the obverse, the front, wasn't just slight. It was pronounced, visible to the naked eye. Lincoln's profile had a subtle shadow behind it, and the word Liberty looked like it was printed twice. But what made this coin extraordinary was the displacement of the D mint mark. It was misaligned in a way that didn't follow any known pattern of mint errors. Numismatists across the country started paying attention. Forums lit up with speculation. Was it a one-off mistake? A rogue die used after hours? Or a deliberate act by a disgruntled mint worker? Offers poured in. First $50,000. Then $200,000. But Harvey wasn't selling. Not yet. He wanted answers first. The history of the 1989 D penny was seemingly unremarkable. Billions were minted, over 5.3 billion, in fact, at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. It was a year like many others in the numismatic world. No known rarity, no special materials, no commemorative design. That's what made the anomaly so confusing. Why would a singular, astonishing error appear in such a common year? Harvey and Elaine started digging. They contacted former employees from the Denver Mint, some retired, some hesitant to talk. After weeks of calls and emails, they got a reply from a man who only identified himself as Mitch. He agreed to meet, but only in person. They met Mitch in a diner off I-25, surrounded by truckers and the hiss of pancake griddles. He was in his late 70s, hunched, with pale eyes that seemed to scan the room constantly. "You didn't hear this from me," he began, "but 1989 wasn't as normal as the records say. There were issues with one of the presses, press 12. Calibration problems. The thing had been producing slight misalignments, mostly centering errors. Most of those coins were caught, melted down. But there was one shift, a Friday night in March, where something strange happened. Mitch claimed that a die had been improperly installed. Not only was it slightly off-center, but the mintmark punch had slipped, creating a die that would strike pennies with a misplaced D. Worse, the die had been paired with a double die obverse. For roughly 3 hours, that faulty setup produced coins before a supervisor caught it. Almost all of them were pulled from circulation and destroyed. Almost. 1 or 2 rolls went out, Mitch said. It happens. You'd be surprised how often the wrong stuff gets through. But this one? I remember it because it caused a huge argument. People got fired. One guy even left the job. Harvey now knew what he had. Not just a double die. Not just a mintmark misplacement. But a survivor from a cover-up. A ghost from a brief moment in mint history that officially never happened. Word got out. Heritage auctions called. So did collectors from Hong Kong, Dubai, and Zurich. The bids escalated fast. One offer, $3.4 million, came with a private jet pickup. But Harvey refused again. He wasn't just chasing money. He was chasing closure. A coin museum in Washington offered to host the penny temporarily, with 24/7 security and full insurance. Harvey agreed, and the coin was displayed under a spotlight, encased in bulletproof glass, next to a short blurb titled, "The Unknown 1989 D." Crowds came. School groups stared. Reporters speculated. And still, the value climbed. Then came the real twist. While the coin was on display, a second one surfaced. A collector in Arizona, unaware of the Denver error, was flipping through a bulk lot of 1989 pennies when he noticed the same doubling and the same misplaced D. His coin was in worse shape, graded VF 30, but its existence confirmed that Harvey's wasn't alone. That changed everything. The discovery of a second specimen legitimized the idea of a small run of misstruck coins, perhaps a dozen, maybe 20 at most. But it also meant the value of Harvey's coin wasn't just tied to uniqueness. It was now the best-known, highest-grade example of a rare variety. The price tag didn't dip. It surged. Private auctions behind closed doors started at $5 million and crept higher. One anonymous bidder, rumored to be a Saudi prince, offered $129 million with a single condition: absolute confidentiality. The coin would never be shown again. No interviews. No photos. Just transferred in a sealed case, via armored courier, to a vault overseas. Harvey didn't say yes immediately. He took a week, walking the hills around his home, thinking about his life. A penny had changed everything. He'd received letters from children who wanted to become coin collectors, stories from families who started checking their change again, people thanking him for bringing wonder back into a world that felt increasingly digital and cold. In the end, he accepted the offer. Not for the money, though that helped. But for the poetry of it. A coin meant to be forgotten had changed lives. It had rewritten history. It had become legend. To this day, the 1989 D-era penny is spoken of in hushed tones at coin shows. No one knows where it is. Only Harvey and the buyer know. But its legacy remains. A reminder that even in the most ordinary places, like the pocket of a pair of jeans or the back of a dusty album, greatness can be hiding. So the next time you get change at a gas station or find a penny on the ground, take a moment. Look closely. That tiny disc of copper might just carry a story that can change your life. If you enjoyed this journey into the unexpected world of rare coins and hidden treasures, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more deep dives like this, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next incredible story. Who knows? Maybe your change jar holds the next $1 million mystery. Thanks for watching. Last 2016 D1 cent USA coin. If you're here again, you already know we don't deal in the ordinary. We dig deep, we uncover, and we shine a light on stories that sound almost too incredible to be true. And if this is your first time with us, buckle in. What you're about to hear isn't just another coin tale. It's a chronicle that reads more like a blockbuster thriller than a monetary anecdote. We're talking about a 2016 D1-cent coin. Yes, a penny. But not just any penny. This one is rumored, confirmed, and whispered about across collector circles as being worth an earth-shaking $867 million. You heard that right. 1 cent, $867 million. It defies logic, but we're going to dissect how, why, and where this mind-bending story takes us. It starts, like many mysteries, in a place that doesn't look like it could hold any secrets, a regular house, in a regular neighborhood, in Denver, Colorado. A man named Thomas Keene was doing something completely mundane, cleaning out his late grandfather's attic. Keene wasn't a collector. He didn't know the first thing about numismatics. All he knew was that he'd inherited a bunch of old military jackets, faded letters, and a dusty jar filled with change. But something about that jar gnawed at him. One coin, in particular, had a shine to it that caught his eye even in the dim light coming through the attic window. It was a 2016 D penny. At first glance, nothing unusual. It had Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, the Denver Mint mark under the year, and the Union Shield design on the back. A penny like billions of others. But when Keene flipped the coin under better light, something strange leapt out. The coin had a subtle misalignment between the obverse and reverse designs. It wasn't enough to notice unless you were really looking, but to a trained eye, or a curious one, it screamed anomaly. He took a picture of it and sent it to a friend who dabbled in coin collecting. That friend immediately told him not to spend it, not to touch it, and absolutely not to clean it. What Keene had, his friend said, could be a minting error. Keene shrugged it off. A minting error might mean a few bucks, maybe a couple hundred if he got lucky. He had no idea what lay beneath that copper coating. Not until his friend went one step further and shared the image on a coin collector's forum. Within 24 hours, that forum exploded. Collectors from around the world chimed in. Specialists argued over the die alignment, the unusual copper sheen, and, most notably, a microscopic doubling in the lettering on "In God We Trust." Suddenly, what looked like a regular 2016 D penny was being compared to the most legendary error coins in American history, the 1943 copper penny, the 1955 doubled die, the 1969 yes. Except this one had something none of the others had: perfect preservation, a flawless luster, and unique characteristics that had never before been seen together on a single 1-cent coin. It wasn't just one error. It was several. Layered. Compounded. And worse, or better, no one could find another like it. It went from coin curiosity to numismatic nuclear bomb in a matter of days. Keene, now intrigued, submitted the coin to the Professional Coin Grading Service. PCGS doesn't hand out accolades easily, but when their team got hold of the coin, their internal report used the word unprecedented. They logged at least 7 separate anomalies on the piece, all of which on their own would be enough to classify a penny as rare. Together, they were something else entirely. First was the off-center strike, barely noticeable to the naked eye, but enough to show that the planchet hadn't been perfectly aligned. Then there was the doubling on the motto and the date, which under magnification, looked like two shadows dancing just behind the lettering. More importantly, the metal content was off. Way off. A lab analysis revealed that the coin wasn't just zinc with a copper coating. It had traces of tungsten, vanadium, and something else that had coin scientists scratching their heads, an element rarely, if ever, found in U.S. currency, iridium. Iridium is one of the rarest elements on Earth. It's used in spacecraft and high-temperature applications, not coins. How it ended up in a penny minted at the Denver Mint in 2016 was a question no one could answer. Speculation ran wild. Some theorized it was an experimental planchet that accidentally entered general circulation. Others guessed it was an inside job, a rogue mint employee testing secret alloys. A more exotic theory, though unproven, tied the composition to an abandoned Department of Defense project involving radiation-resistant materials for currency that could withstand nuclear fallout. The theory sounded ridiculous until someone realized the atomic weight of iridium lines up precisely with the levels found in the penny. The coin's fame grew beyond collector circles. News stations picked up the story. Economists weighed in. Bidding began, privately at first, then through larger auction houses. The numbers kept climbing. First $100,000. Then $500,000. 1 million. 10 million. By the time Sotheby's got involved, it had ballooned into a frenzy of absurd offers from Saudi royals, tech moguls, and even a rumored bid from a former European monarch, the final recorded bid that was seriously considered? $867 million. At that price, the coin wouldn't just be the most valuable penny ever, it would be the most expensive piece of currency in human history. More than any gold doubloon, more than any ancient Roman aureus, even more than the 1933 double eagle, whose own legal status made it a legend. But what made this 2016 D coin special wasn't just its errors or its metal. It was its uniqueness. No other like it existed. And in a world addicted to scarcity, this 1-cent piece was the ultimate trophy. The moment word got out about the final bid, Keane went dark. No interviews. No social media. He disappeared from the public eye. Some say he moved to a secluded island. Others believe he still keeps the coin locked in a safe, declining all offers. There's even a growing belief that the coin has vanished, that Keane had it melted, insured it, or placed it in a trust fund only to be unlocked after a certain number of years, but what matters isn't whether he sold it or still has it. What matters is how a single coin, one overlooked, ordinary coin, can rewrite history. How it can flip our entire understanding of value on its head. Because let's face it, coins don't just carry metal. They carry stories. And this one carried more than most. After the 2016 D pennies saga broke, a new generation of collectors surged into the hobby. Coin shows reported record attendance. Online marketplaces saw unprecedented listings of 2016 D coins, most worthless, but all held up with hope. Hope that theirs might be the next miracle. People began scrutinizing their change again. Pocket change wasn't just spare cash anymore, it was potential. It was possibility, and then came the ripple effects. Government officials launched internal reviews of the Denver Mint. Nothing incriminating surfaced, but a hush-hush report leaked, mentioning unaccounted planchets and experimental metallurgical trials. Mint employees were quietly reassigned. The metal supplier contracts were re-evaluated. No one would admit anything publicly, but the whispers persisted. The 2016 D coin shouldn't have happened. It wasn't meant to. Which only added to its allure. Universities started using it as a case study. Economics professors debated the nature of value. Is something truly worth what someone will pay for it, or is value intrinsic? Philosophy departments chimed in. Even art critics got involved, arguing the penny's imperfections made it a sculpture born by accident, not design, and through all this, the legend grew. Documentaries were made. Podcasts exploded with theories. But at the center of it all remained that tiny copper disc and the man who found it by accident in his grandfather's attic. Think about that point: one ordinary day. One ordinary person. And one extraordinary discovery. It's a reminder that treasure doesn't always come wrapped in gold or locked in ancient vaults. Sometimes it clinks in a jar above your garage. Sometimes it lives quietly in your pocket, waiting for you to notice, and that's why we're here, to share stories like this. Stories that challenge what we think we know. Stories that start small and end epic. Because behind every coin is a history. A secret. A twist waiting to be uncovered. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to like this video. It helps the channel more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got plenty more stories like this, stranger than fiction, richer than myth, and truer than you'd believe. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep checking your change. You never know what piece of history might be hiding in plain sight.